The internet is going crazy over this photo from inauguration weekend in DC, where young Trump supporters, dressed to the nines, appear to be having the time of their lives. X users are calling the image something out of an F. Scott Fitzgerald novel and Norman Rockwell maxing. It's the cover photo of what was meant to be a hit piece on a new brand of young right wingers. All it did, though, is call members of the MAGA movement attractive and fun. Online users, as well as the New York Post, went at length to ID the accidental socialites on the cover. We just have to dive into this damning story from New York Magazine's features writer and self-professed resident party girl, Brock Collier.
It's easy to see the festivities as an obnoxious victory lap of the MAGA coalition, and of course, they are. Conservatism as a cultural force, not just a political condition, is back in a real way for the first time since the 1980s.
Can't argue with that. So far, this doesn't really seem that insulting.
Here in DC, among the tourists from Tampa, the donors, and the last politicians Trump whipped into submission, one can also witness the emerging influence of a newer type of conservative. They are not disenfranchised or working class or anti-elite or many of the other adjectives used to describe Trump supporters since 2016. Rather, they are young, imposingly well-connected, urban, and very online. They are rebels once again storming Capitol Hill, though without the pathetic scariness of the January 6 rioters.
Wow, all right. He goes on.
Almost everyone is white. The men look like Pete Hegseth, in bow ties and black suits with clean-shaven faces. The women are almost all out of their league.
Okay, mostly true, but not entirely. I was reliably told it was far more diverse than reported. The organizer of the party was C.J. Pearson. The left wants you to think young right-wingers are boring and cookie-cutter. The problem they seem to run into, though, repeatedly, is that with platforms like YouTube, TikTok, and X, anyone can be, quite literally, the media. This idea that MAGA is only for stuffy white dudes is not the case anymore. Pearson has 521,000 followers on X, and he's also the co-chair of the GOP Youth Advisory Council because, unlike, who wrote this again? Brock Collier, he understands what will bring Gen Z over to his side.
Could there, CJ, be just an innocent explanation for this?
No. And it's one of those things where just when you think the leftist corporate media couldn't go any lower, they somehow find their way to the basement. It's disgusting, but it's part of the course. They wanted to perpetuate the narrative that the MAGA movement is nothing more than some white supremacist, racist cult, so they deliberately erased the black people from these images. And I gotta tell you, I'm a little offended. We're days away from Black History Month, and they pulled this stunt. It's a little offensive.
This is insane, Pearson wrote on X. I hosted this event, and New York Magazine intentionally left me out of their story because it would have undermined their narrative that MAGA is some racist cult. They also didn't include the fact that Waka Flocka Flame, a rapper, and Gervonta Davis, a boxer, were also there. You don't hate the liberal media enough, he said. The magazine cropped several minorities out of the photo before plastering it on the cover. The few left in, as you can see, are hidden behind bold text. I believe this is precisely what the left calls erasure. The credibility of the magazine, and I'm sure this features writer, has taken a huge hit for that. He writes,
Their makeup is subtle, their hair only gently blown out, their faces not noticeably Botoxed. All in all, they are less yassified than the older women in their party, say Kimberly Guilfoyle. In this house, Melania is mother.
On second thought, you cannot convince me this is a hit piece. It sounds like paid advertising. Young and successful Gen Zers are naturally beautiful. There's inclusivity. Is this a cry for help from, what's his name again? Brock Collier. You see, legacy media just doesn't have the same bite these days. They're outnumbered now. And alternative media is having its day in the sun. The White House has expanded press credentials to a lot of these new outlets, and today's White House communications team is young and savvy. For example, it's headed by the youngest press secretary ever at age 27. Caroline Leavitt was trained under the GOAT, Kayleigh McEnany, during the first Trump administration, and she served as national press secretary on the 2024 Trump campaign. The hundreds of thousands tuned into her briefing debut noticed that unlike her predecessor, Karine Jean-Pierre, Leavitt was, number one, answering questions, and number two, doing so without a massive binder. The binder, she told journalists, is in my head. Levitt and the press team are also overhauling the way news is delivered, and like I said, whose voices it's coming from now.
According to recent polling from Gallup, Americans' trust in mass media has fallen to a record low. Millions of Americans, especially young people, have turned from traditional television outlets and newspapers to consume their news from podcasts, blogs, social media, and other independent outlets.
Traditionally, the briefing room holds 49 seats for White House correspondents. The Trump admin will be breaking with this tradition to offer a 50th rotating seat to members of new media.
We welcome independent journalists, podcasters, social media influencers, and content creators to apply for credentials to cover this White House.
It's widely believed that it was these podcasters and influencer types who helped drive home Trump's victory, especially among Gen Z. Within 24 hours, the White House had received over 7,400 requests for new media credentials. Levitt didn't wait to begin the new directive either. She called on journalists in the back row who haven't had the chance to ask anything of KJP or Jen Psaki in the last administration.
Reagan, since you're in the back row, I hear the back row hasn't gotten much attention in the last 4 years, so I'm happy to answer your question.
And I can project. Does the president intend to permanently cut off funding to NGOs that are bringing illegal foreign nationals to the country, such as Catholic charities?
That's Reagan Reese of the Daily Caller, who later explained, the last time KJP called on me was January of 2024. DC had gotten a light dusting of snow, and most correspondents didn't show up to the briefing. I was one of the few journalists who still attended and essentially forced her to call on me. The media revolution is just beginning. We're barely 2 weeks in, and we'll keep you in the loop as new talent takes Washington. Be sure to subscribe for more content like this and check out our most recent video on the horrible reactions from the left to Trump's mass deportation plan.